Hello, this is Truth Be Told Transformation, and I'm Bonnie Burkert, here to share tools for transformation to step into your higher truth. Today, I am welcoming Tracee Dunblazier. Tracee's going to be one of the speakers at the Paranormal Festival, which is taking place March 31st and April 1st, 2023 in Santa Clarita, California. And it's going to be an amazing weekend of just the conscious community coming together around everything from UFOs to ghost hunting and Native American wisdom, ancient Egypt. There's going to be a sound bath, and most importantly, Tracee's going to be talking to us about crystals and crystal healing. Certainly one of my tools for transformation. Welcome, Tracee.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi. So tell us a little bit about what to expect from your workshop. I know you don't tell us everything because people have to come and see you, but what's it like speaking at these events, and what do you think you'll bring to Parapod given our slant on the paranormal and really lots of different subjects?
Well, the paranormal is my sweet spot because my whole thing has always been I was born haunted. So in my experience, my relationship to mediumship was because of being born multi-spirited and having all of these multi-dimensional experiences and not really having a language for them or being surrounded by people who could support me in that or even understand it. So my goal is to, every time I do these speaking engagements, I love it. Every vibe is different. There's always a different group of people. I like to think of it as a karmic relationship that we have, where everyone that is brought together in that moment, in that time, is all there to hear a specific message, which, Spirit has prepared me to offer them. So every time I speak, it's different. I'm not good at the canned show.
Good.
Even if I wanted to be, I'm not. But so there's going to be some experiences. We're going to be working with a crystal. I'm bringing crystals, or it's going to be show and tell. I'm going to be bringing some stuff, and we're going to talk about really whomever is there. We're going to touch on what they most need as it regards to healing with crystals or working and channeling with crystals.
Okay, that's beautiful. And we'll talk more specifics on the crystals, but I do want to ask a little bit more about your background because you specialize in trauma healing. Is that correct?
I do.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit timeline for you. So what came first? Your studies in that area of healing, or were you informed by crystals? And you mentioned, do I call it mediumship? Is that right? I mean, that you're bringing the energy through. So tell me the sequence of events that helped, form who you are today, Tracee.
I was born multi-spirited, and basically that means that I had multiple souls connected with me when I was born. And so my frame or my lens on life was hearing their multiple voices and the way I saw through their eyes oftentimes. This is a little different than somebody who has multiple personalities because I was very aware of who I was and that I was separate from all of the other energies. Another way to talk about it as well, it's a little different, but I had enormous spiritual trauma. And when you have enormous spiritual trauma, oftentimes you come into a certain incarnation to process through that trauma that you were unable to grieve in the lifetime where you experienced it. And that was my case. And I learned about grief. I learned about spirituality. I think I've had multiple lifetimes of being spiritual and having a spiritual practice. So in this lifetime, I'm very much a solitary practitioner. I love spirituality and I even appreciate religions, but I don't follow any one of them because none of them are accurate to my experience. So I learned about grief. And then when there is mental illness in the family, as there was in my ancestry, I think it just naturally kept me from talking about my experiences. And it wasn't until I came to LA that I started meeting many other people who had similar experiences. And then eventually somebody I worked for at the time found out that I did readings, and I was invited to start doing readings. And then within 6 months, I was doing that full time, and I've done that ever since.
Amazing. Wow, that is such a blessing. And okay, so, I mean, this is a question I could ask anybody in general, but when you do readings for people, is there kind of an exhaustion factor that comes in for you ever? I mean, it feels like you're pulling through probably some really intense information. And I'm sorry if that's kind of a vague term to say intense, that's that. I mean, but you're dealing with people's traumas. I mean, you're helping people shift through it. What is
Yes.
that like for you? And then how do you clear it and adjust to it? Because I feel like this could be helpful for people, whether they're officially a medium or just there for others and taking
Right.
on these conversations as you try to help.
Absolutely. For me, it actually, I find it quite inspiring every time I work with somebody and channeling through. Oftentimes you're channeling through what we would call higher vibrational information. So that's not the tiring part. The tiring part is um, if you personally have any resistance to the information that's coming through, because a lot of times you will receive information that has importance to you as well. And the other part is that if the person on the other end is not prepared to hear what you have to say, there's going to be some resistance on their part.
Okay.
And so when you get that pushback, trying to get somebody to hear what you're saying is a powerful experience. And I've had times where I've just had to say, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. We can't go any further. Let me know, if you want to talk at some future time, but today's not the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So boundaries, setting boundaries.
All about boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. Just so that they can't hear you. So it's almost like you have to know when to stop. That is very valuable.
It is.
In a lot of, even if you're so clear and you feel that you know something, if you can't be heard, then we must let it go.
Absolutely. That is the numero uno life lesson. When you're saying something, and one of the things that I recommend to anybody, because there's a lot of people experiencing awakenings right now, and they're getting information about their friends or their family. And I like to call that keeping their secret. It's not really for you to share unless they ask.
Okay.
When you break that trust, if you will, when you receiving the information is powerful because it gives them permission to have access to it easily through you, or to start preparing to do what they need to do in order to receive it. But oftentimes when you receive information, it's meant for you to hold it until someone comes to you directly and wants to receive it from you. I'm a straight shooter, and because I work with such profoundly deep and sometimes ominous topics, I'm all like, when people say, I've had people at parties, put their hand in my face and say, "Oh, read my palm," and I'm like,
God.
No,
that's just,
no, this is not the place or the time, because oftentimes what comes through is not what they were prepared to hear. It's not your regular prophecy. But asking someone, "Hey, I'm having a thought. Can I share it with you? Would you like to hear it?" And people oftentimes they'll know themselves well enough to say, yes or no, and you can trust that.
That is very interesting to hear that, and to understand how you work with how it works in general and how you work with people.
Yes.
So let's bring crystals into it. Now, tell me your subject at Parapod. Is it your book? Okay, let's talk about your book.
Okay.
All right. It's called Crystal Allies.
Yes.
Right. Navigating. I didn't write down the whole title. You'll tell me.
Yes, the 12 best gems and minerals for healing trauma and navigating change.
Okay, nice. So do I get to, okay, I'm going to guess a couple that are in there. All right.
Okay.
You'll tell me if I'm right. Rose quartz?
Yes.
Black tourmaline?
No.
Interesting.
I know. I mean, that there aren't just 12 stones, and trust, like, I chose all of these stones, and I'm going to show you all of the stones that I chose are ones that I have very long relationships with, that I have worked with for decades, and that I've had multiple experiences over time.
Labradorite?
No.
So I'm outing myself. I'm outing all my favorite crystals to you. Okay, this is
Uh-huh.
exciting. I like that you don't have the same crystals as me, Tracee.
Yes, I know. Try one more. Try one more.
I'm going to say, well, clear quartz.
Yes.
I mean, that's I don't want to call it basic because it's the all. It's kind of the be all.
I
Amethyst?
have I have yes. Yes. Oh,
Amethyst
and
is
I
in
have
there.
a
My
let me
birthstone.
actually, the amethyst is in the second book. I had this is the first of a series of three. Ultimately, it's going to be four, and a set of altar cards with crystals. And I'm going to show you the amethyst from this because
Oh,
this
that
is
this is good. Altar cards.
phenomenal.
I want some altar cards. Are you going to be having those at Parapod Festival?
I am doing a Kickstarter. They won't be out. This is
Oh,
well
that's good.
this isn't the amethyst, but this is a smoky cathedral quartz.
For those of you listening, we've got just a beautiful stone. The colors of the background are a great indigo and a beautiful rose pink, and these are going to be stunning. So this is just the
Yeah.
sample that you're giving us, Tracee, for a deck
I
yet to come. Is that correct?
these are my mock-ups that I put together from the printed material that the designs we've come up with. This is the amethyst,
Oh, ah, this is
and,
good.
and it's called a dragon's tooth.
These,
And this
this is your
the,
collection. Are these images from your private collection?
they are.
Okay, this is good.
You know, as I travel a lot, and I do altars everywhere I go. I set up travel altars or whatever, and so I always bring stones with me, and always they're stopping me at the security at the airport. LA has gotten better about it. But
Same.
every other place other than LA, they think it's a weapon or other things, and that, in addition to them being really heavy to carry, you know, I came up with these cards, and Spirit really inspired me that my collection needed to be used on a grander scale. And so when people work with these, they're working with this stone and getting to know this stone, and this stone can lead them, if they want, to their own particular specimen that they're going to steward, or they can just work with this. So it's great for anybody who is interested but doesn't really want, it doesn't have the commitment of buying an entire collection.
Yeah, yes. That's a great way to do it. I love that.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see this deck once it gets completed. It's a really, really good idea. Now, all right, so let's talk about your current book, though. Again, it's called
Yeah.
Crystal Allies. And
Yes.
tell us your website, please, so that people can find it.
The book website is my publishing website is www.beaslayer.com.
Be a Slayer. Nice.
Be a
Okay.
Slayer. And hashtag Be a Slayer. You can see all the work that I've done. All the events that I do are always hashtagged with that.
Oh, I didn't know that about you. May I ask about that term? It's rather fierce.
Well, because I'm known as a demon slayer. My first series was called the Demon Slayer's Handbook series, and I address hauntings and otherworldly entities and spirit guides, that kind of thing. And then I also deal with karmic relationships and spiritual imprints and trauma. So people who have hauntings or who have those experiences, that's what the original series is, to help people with those things, or help the people who help the people.
Hey, it's very interesting, and I seem to think I lived in New York City for a lot of years, and now in LA in an old house, and I've had other people on that deal with hauntings, and it's a thing. I mean, I really don't think about it much. I have told stories in the past about living in New York. The building was, I think, about 100 years old, and somebody died in it. Died. The downstairs neighbor died. Older fellow. Nothing, nothing nefarious. But
Right.
there were things that happened, and
Mhm.
I just ignored them. But in
Mhm.
retrospect, I'm like, I think those were hauntings potentially.
Yes.
And I
However,
just chose to not deal with it because I was so busy working in the music business, rock and roll. I had shows to be at. I didn't
yeah.
have time to be scared.
Yes. You know, I lived in New York as well for about a decade. I loved it. And it was the most haunted place ever. People were haunted. I mean, the people that I felt kindredship with were people that were unhoused and living on the street and in the vibe of the streets. Like I had many folks stop and channel messages from spirit to me on the train and
Wow.
different places. Yeah. And I was right at home with that. Like I was grateful to receive their gifts of channel because New York, I was haunted. New York was a great time for me, but it was an intense time of enormous grief because I was really processing through a lot of the emotions of some of the imprints that I had. So
And it's an interesting place to do so because to me,
yes,
my experience with New York City was just its potency. There was so much to do and so many people to do it with. I mean, it never stopped. The city that never sleeps, right?
nope,
As
that's
opposed to
right.
out here in LA, more wide open, easier access to nature, right? To kind of work through things. And I'd say in general, maybe, I don't know if you, to what extent you would say slower pace, but certainly a more openness and even
Right.
just knowing the verbiage around some of the spiritual healing techniques.
Right.
And I mean, it's not to say, and yet at the same time, I too, like you, would have people just say, "How you doing? I have a message coming through. Would you be interested?" And then shift into a
Right.
British accent. Oh, and all of a sudden, like this person transformed in front of my eyes. And
Yes.
my message that time, I'll just go ahead and share it because it's coming up. There's a
Uh-huh.
fine line between being in a groove and being in a rut.
Mm.
And I looked at that because it was like, oh yeah, I'm in a groove here and everything like that. But to what extent was it? I think it was foretelling a time to then roll on to the next adventure.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to share that little bit
That's an
because that
amazing
was like
message.
this wild channel that came through in the ladies' room after some lecture, and the energy was high. So
Absolutely.
yeah, as it is now. So okay, let me ask you now, with so much interest in the paranormal. Obviously, people are more informed. There's all kinds of shows like ours, TV shows. I mean, whatever
Yeah.
major network programming through the years. So people are more aware than ever, right?
Yeah.
About perhaps let's just talk about hauntings. Let's talk about other dimensions, right? So what does that mean for somebody who you've been doing this for a while? What does that
Mhm.
look like? Are people that much more open? Is it coming up more frequently that people are needing help because they're feeling it and maybe identifying what it is, and so they come to you? I mean, what's the trajectory here?
Um, so I feel like you're asking two questions. So I'm going
Probably.
to answer
I
one and then I'm going to answer another and we'll see if we can figure out if that's what you're asking. Um, the world is going through an enormous cleansing, shifting, and grief is the aspect or element of our humanity that it clears it actually, if we cry for 10 minutes or more, it literally shifts and clears neurons in the brain. It erases neurons in the brain
Wow.
and then creates a space for us to repopulate the neurons with a new thought form or idea. And so emotions, like things like the pandemic, you know, hundreds of thousands of couples broke up because they realized they didn't really know each other when they had to spend time together, right? And then people and then they came together and they realized how different they are. Like this pandemic has required a whole other level of self-reflection and a requirement for self-understanding or struggle or conflict with it, a reckoning of addressing what your true needs are as opposed to what you thought you needed, or recognizing and admitting to yourself how you've changed. And it's led to an enormous amount of grief, and that's not even addressing the millions of people who have died because of COVID. Right. So there's an enormous amount of loss of job. There's all of this loss. It creates this overwhelming sense of grief on a global level. When that transpersonal grief happens, it causes a cleansing for many, and they awaken to their gifts. We all are multidimensional, and what it means to be multidimensional. A thought we have is a dimension. Like, I think, oh, how lovely your hair is. Then I go into your dimension. I go to where you are. That's, that thought, that connection is an idea that's a plot point in the matrix of life, and it's a space, right? So anytime we have a thought, the way we speak, the way we are clairvoyant, the way we visualize things, the way we channel from different frequencies of energy or different light bodies, is also a dimension, right? So those are the main awakenings that you're seeing people have right now. So they're becoming telepathic, they're becoming intuitive, they are allowing themselves to grieve or being forced to grieve because they don't know how to stop it. So those I think are the two questions you were asking. Did I get it right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter because your wisdom is fabulous. There's so much there, and it's really interesting to look at.
Yes.
Just a different perspective on it. Again, like I said, there's so much interest, but I think there's knowledge, and thus people are practicing and hearing more things from them. I guess one of the things I do kind of want to ask you is there a shadow side to that?
Absolutely. I mean, that is what my specialty is working with those things. When we call something a shadow, it really is just the hidden parts of ourselves that we do not yet know. And it is those things that sometimes we have shame about, we are curious about, we have proclivities to, but we don't want to admit, things that are the opposite of what our community finds acceptable. All of those things are what we call our shadow. And as we discover what those things are and embrace them, those are our power centers. It is the way we call on energetic, life force from the creator into our physical human experience, whether it's in our body or how we project our life out into the world.
Okay. Yeah, no, that feels really, really good. So tell me, okay, you've got such wisdom just through this kind of work. Tell me how crystals factor in for you and for us.
Crystals, there's something called the crystal habit.
Okay.
And it is the way, when you look at a crystal, it's the way that it is shaped and formed. And there are some crystals that are macrocrystalline, so you can actually see the point, yes, right, of the crystal and how it formed.
Right.
And then you have ones that are microcrystalline. So inside this sphere, there are itty bitty microscopic, you cannot see them with your naked eye, crystals.
Right.
And that pattern is what we connect with, and it aligns with us. Each crystal has different minerals, different colors that form it, and we align with that energy. And it pulls out certain things. It allows us to see certain things. It connects us to certain things. It gives us a more of a depth. It can also, I mean, for me, I processed an enormous amount of grief, especially in New York. And then my first 10 years here, it was like a decade of grieving on every level. And my crystals helped me so much to ground, to communicate. This one in particular, I'm going to show it to you. It's my smoky cathedral quartz, and the actual stone, there you go. The actual stone is about almost a little over a foot tall.
Oh my gosh. Fantastic.
And it just has cities upon cities upon cities. And working with this stone, not only did it ground and quell my consistent anxiety, but meditating with it made me connect with my extraplanetary beings, my guides. It made me always recognize that I'm not alone, no matter how I feel, that I'm not isolated, that this time I'm experiencing will move through eventually. And when it does, there's going to be a whole new path to follow. And that gave me enormous comfort. That there are also crystals that like I said, make it like tourmaline is a great one when you're having an enormous grief and you're having a hard time stopping, even for a while. It helps to ground and focus and center you so that you can have a little respite in between grief sessions.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. When you work with the crystal, like you mentioned, that one was big. Do you sometimes? I actually brought one along. It was in my pocket. You know what you were talking about, going through airport security, and I just have a little crystal Merkaba. But do
Oh,
you
wonderful.
hold them or do you gaze into them? What is your?
Oh, all of the above. So I have got some more these are, I am so into these dragon's teeth. These are also dragon's teeth, if you can see them.
Fabulous.
And they're amethyst, and they have a lot of iron oxide in them, and so I think they come from South Africa, but they're really amazing to connect. And like amethyst specifically is for sobriety, but not just sobriety in terms of like addictive behaviors, but sobriety in terms of receiving the awe-inspiring information that comes through and saying, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing yourself to go, okay, just take it. And, it is neither fortune nor misfortune. Receive the information, keep moving. Right.
Yeah.
Getting acclimating to the new level of new higher frequency of flow that happens when you begin to be clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient. It requires you to be a little more reserved in your responses and reaction to things. And this is an excellent stone to work with when you are working with your self-mastery of your emotions.
Okay.
And that's not about controlling your emotions. It is about receiving your emotions, expressing your emotions, acknowledging the purpose of your emotions, and then moving on from your emotions.
Okay. Yeah.
So
okay.
This
is good. And I really appreciate, again, you're telling us specifics about the stones and how to work with them. But at the same time, you're also showing us your prowess in dissecting a problem, helping people look at it from a lot of levels and move through it, ideally. So it's really, really beautiful to hear. So one of the things as I was winding my question around with many different thoughts, I am always very interested in the collective.
Yes.
And we're hearing about, and you said it yourself, we're hearing about the changing energies. And one of the things I hear from people that are talking about ascension is that we're becoming more crystalline beings. Do you know this?
I think that it's when we talk about ascension, there's a lot that has to happen in order for us to ascend and participate in these particular ways I think that people talk about. For me, I look at ascension as drawing in those higher spiritual frequencies into my human experience.
Yes.
So I'm not going out and I'm not ascending to something else. I am expanding to a new level of relationship with myself, the planet, and other people.
Okay.
While we are in a body, we're in a body. And it's really important to honor that and focus on it, to give it the acceptance and the honor it is due, the honor, the respect. So I try not to get caught up in, like, I just came from it was an ascension, the Sedona Ascension retreat, and it was all about that. But I find that sometimes when people get focused on this idea of we are crystalline beings, I think that all of that information is true right now, today, in this moment, in your body.
Anyway, right. Yeah.
Right?
It always has been.
Right. So this is our awakening to being able to acknowledge and function in this new way without dying. Without blowing up the planet, right? I mean, we're not all going to be 5D until our planet begins to heal.
Yeah.
And until we start making the choices that create a space for all of us to live in peace, and that's not happened before. We are not the first to try this. There have been untold cultures. We only know of a few galactic cultures who have tried to live here on Earth and blown it up every time. And there's always been a new ice age or a new response to what the Earth needed. So this is our opportunity to expand into a whole other level of awareness. And we are all doing it, whether or not people want to, or whether or not they're on board.
Yeah.
It's happening.
I love hearing it. I do love hearing that. And yet at the same time, I'd say conversations like this help us know that it's happening in a more real way, and it's not just a fairy tale. It's really, you're giving very concrete examples of the fact that the earth is changing. It doesn't have to be mystical. It is changing. Right. Always has, by the way. It's not, we're not getting into this like, get over the charge around climate change. It's like we're not, there's no finger pointing going on. We're just acknowledging our planet is a living being, Mother Gaia. And you're helping this though. So I love it because you're acknowledging me, and yet you bring it back to reality as well. I don't know if I like that word, but you bring it back to practical.
Yeah, I think they're both great words because if we can't take this information and figure out how I can get through watching the news or how I'm going to pay my bills, how can I use this to help me not cry every day or feel sad every day, or look at what people are doing to themselves and each other. This is a profound time, and we have to be able to use the information to help us in a very concrete way with those things. All that other stuff is great, but if it can't help me, if I can't bring all that 5D here and have it help me be strong enough to be a better person and to navigate the changing world in a way of dignity and respect for myself and others. And, I'm a firm believer that dignity and respect and that command, it's, when you talk about setting boundaries, we set those boundaries on spiritual levels. And that changes the molecules in our space. It shifts us from being a target or victimized on some levels. Like it can work at the lowest the planet has to offer, the lowest that people have to offer. Your dignity and respect can create a space for you to move forward in peace and love and joy, and not have to be fearful. Right? That's the thing, is I think people switch from this higher vibration, light and love perspective to being fearful of being in it.
Right. Because it's not always easy. There's going to be some challenges that go with it. And it's the light. It's like turning on the light in your apartment and seeing you need to dust or something like that,
Exactly.
Do you know what I'm going to do when I go home? So no, it's really true. Okay, Tracee, I could ask you more and more and more, but instead I'm just going to come to your workshop at the Parapod Festival.
Good.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I really look forward to hearing all that you have to say. Congratulations on the work that you're doing and the books that you've got out there for us. And again, we will see you at Parapod Festival on April 1st. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. Cheers, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Bonnie Burkert. This has been Truth Be Told Transformation. And I'm talking to you about the Parapod Festival. It's our debut event, bringing in everything that all of our Truth Be Told shows love to talk about and favorite speakers that we've had on. So that's Tony Sweet, who has his show on Fridays at 3, and Robert Hensley on Mondays also at 3, and Metaphor and myself. We are here to help reveal the possibilities that exist out there, and just to go ahead and believe. We're coming together March 31st and April 1st in Santa Clarita Valley, up in the Los Angeles area. You can find out information at parapodfestival.com. We look forward to meeting you there. Until then, thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you for the next time. Shine on.